Well, dang, Danny, that was definitely some B.B. Ray Shepherd tone if I've ever heard some myself.
Thank you very much. As an Israeli, I think that's the closest to a Texas tone that's achievable for us.
Well, I have to say, no matter where you're from, the steel string Mini SRV is absolutely great at nailing those tones. I mean, what I heard already just from you kind of going through it, I mean, that crystal kind of top end snap was there. The fat low end was there. When you're kind of playing, you know, rude mood-ish sort of stuff, it certainly shines through. But, you know, I'm a manufacturer. You're a true guitar player playing professionally. What are you kind of feeling so far just from kind of getting to play with this pedal over the last couple of days?
Well, okay, so first thing, I think many of us have this thing where we idolize Stevie. He's the best. I will vouch for that. And we look at his rig and we try to emulate it. And it's basically a clean amp. And we see that he has a pair of tube screamers. And everybody in the world has the experience of coming home and having that tube screamer in your chain and not getting the tone. It's not, on its own, it just doesn't do it because it compresses, it gives you the sustain, it tames the bass, but it doesn't give you the top.
Right.
And all the finesse of the sound. And I feel like if you're really trying to go for the Stevie Ray Vaughan tone at home and reconstruct it, you will need that tube screamer at the end of your chain, or closer to the end, to get the amp to behave in the way that you want it, but you need something closer to the guitar to, you know, really detail the sound, carve out the top end, add the sparkle back that's going to go away when you operate a tube screamer, and really give you that very satisfying snap that happens to the string when you dig in.
Yeah, show us what you mean.
Well, I mean, turn it off for a second.
Okay, so here's off. This is just our deluxe reverb.
Right. Still pretty snappy, but
Yeah.
with. Certain thing with Stevie, it's hard to explain the sound. I heard somebody describe it as biting on a piece of metal. That's how the notes feel, the snap. It's like, and you cannot reproduce it without, you know, getting your amp to that exact level of saturation, but still all the overtones being present. Very tricky to do. This does the best job I've heard.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this wouldn't be replacing your tube screamer. I think
No.
it goes without saying that if you want the SRV tone, you need to have a tube screamer in the mix. The challenge is that most of us are not able to take a super reverb or take a vibroverb or take a Dumble steel string singer and get the amount of level that he's using that creates a whole new dynamic in terms of the interaction with the guitar and the amplifier, and being able to reintroduce that, because the only way that we can really get the kind of simulated output or volume of a higher gain amp, but in our home recording or our home studio or just playing in a jam, is to just crank up the gain, and that compresses the tube screamer even more.
Correct.
So what this is doing is providing you sort of the amp emulation, because it is based off of a steel string singer amplifier. We actually had steel string singer #1 to kind of voice our original steel string pedal, and then we've kind of made some iterations from there to kind of help exaggerate certain sounds. I never had Stevie Ray Vaughan's actual steel string singer. Again, I only had the very first one ever made. But Stevie's did have a little bit more mid-range content. It definitely had that top end snap, that kind of crystally top, had that low end bitiness that you talked about, like biting on metal. And so we changed the EQ format of this a little bit to try to exaggerate some of those things that I really hear when I hear his sound, to try to emulate that if you're pairing it with your favorite overdrive, whether that be a tube screamer, blues breaker, or other common maybe low to mid gain overdrive that you might ordinarily use to kind of get in more of that bluesier, you know, Stevie Ray, BB Ray Shepherd type tone.
Yeah, another huge advantage of this pedal is how dynamic it is and how it lends itself to the guitar cleaning up.
Yep.
So you get all the way from like just, you know, those typical Stevie Ray Vaughan shuffly sounds and his riffage, like these type of tones, which are saturated as you want it to get, with like just dialing back without changing anything except for the volume, dialed back to 7, you get to those Lenny kind of tones. With all the harmonic detail there, maybe a little. To me, that's right there in that ballpark, all the glassiness.
Right, and if we turn it off, like if you just did that roll down without the pedal on, what do you get?
Wow, that feels really bad.
Yeah, it's plinky, and then bring it back in and it's...
Turn it off for a sec. It's sort of all the complexity goes away.
Right. Right, and so this is definitely taking your clean amp, giving it some character. I mean, and even if you're not a fan of Stevie Ray Vaughan or some of maybe the kind of offshoots of that basic tone, whether it be John Mayer or you know other people that have classically used that kind of amplifier, we're just using a regular reissued deluxe reverb here. There's nothing that's unique about this. We are using a custom shop Strat, which is a great guitar. They have great pickups. But most certainly, you know, is talking about sort of the sum of the whole. If we're talking about, you know, a steel string singer as being a $250,000 amplifier, we have $199 for the steel strings SRV Mini into a kind of a pretty standard backlight clean amp. And this is getting us a lot of the way there. You put your favorite tube screamer in front of that, you got your lead sound, you know, you can add in other sort of overdrives, boosts, whatever it may be, and that's really gonna get you a lot of the way there, and this is really doing a lot of the heavy lifting as far as that kind of core amplifier tone that you would be getting by having a cranked loud amp like Stevie was always using.
Absolutely, and this is sort of the typical blues jam setup, some kind of Fender amp, some kind of Strat, and the question is, with a few pedals, how do you get to this place where you can play comfortably, you know, on stage? But it doesn't only do like Stevie things well. I mean, when I have the previous version of this in my rig, and I love that little knob.
Yeah, so let's maybe go through a few of the settings. I think for the most part, just so it's clear, this isn't a super high gain overdrive. Even if I go to the max gain, let's hear the kind of the difference on and off of the max gain. So here's max gain. So certainly not like a overwhelmingly high gain pedal. It's pretty, I'd say, low to mid gain.
We're not in metal territory.
And I think for the most part, you know, kind of hanging somewhere around 50% to 3/4 of the way is kind of the sweet spot. Filter control is just an interactive mid-range control. It kind of helps you just dial in kind of the right amount of mids, whether you have a scooped out amp like we have here, the classic Fender. If you have something that's voxier, you may want to bring down some of that mid-range. But I kind of just have it in the middle, and it's just, you know, it's just something you're just kind of using to taste. It's not super active. Here's like the lowest setting. And now here's the brightest it gets.
Still all in the realm of usable.
Nothing extreme, right? And then we have the Jazz Rock switch, and this is, I think, the really cool feature about what this does. And this voicing is a little bit different than our other steel string versions that are the standard and not the SRV, the slight returned version. And this is really kind of acting either as a bass boost or as a treble boost. So kind of depending on how your amp is set, what kind of guitar you have, you can use this as sort of a compensation. So right now we have it in the rock setting, and this is going to be a little bit bolder of a sound. And so I want you to play a little section of that, and then I'll switch it over to the jazz setting, and it's going to mellow it out a little bit.
Sure.
I don't know about you, but through a Fender amp, I definitely think the rock setting is the move.
So in my personal rig, I play through a 412. When you have the cab size to produce actual bass frequencies at the very low end of your guitar, and you're playing with a bassist, to me that switch does magic because it gets you completely out of the way of the bass.
Yep.
And but to me this is like kind of like the big rig, small rig compensation. So you have different needs when you're playing a 112 cab or a 212 cab. Definitely for me it's knob down.
In the rock
412, I start flicking those kind of things up,
Right.
getting rid of that, because you know the cab size itself, the speaker width is producing the wavelength at the very bottom that's going to get you nice pillowy sound under the band, and then it scoops out in the right places to get you out of the way of your bass guitar.
Absolutely. Well, Dani, I think this has been a really cool experience. Firstly, to have you playing through some of the SRV style licks. If you're interested in checking out the Steel String Supreme SSS Mini SRV, the slight return version, definitely do talk to your Sweetwater sales engineer. They're going to be able to help you figure out how this is going to be best paired into your rig, what other pedals you might want to combine it with if you're going to be choosing some other overdrives. Maybe you're going to go super classic, use a classic tube screamer. That's a great pairing with this, but really any low to mid-gain, kind of mid-range based overdrive is going to be great through those Fender style amps, and you might be able to even go some more aggressive style overdrives or some asymmetrical clipping with other style amplifiers that might have a little bit more mids. Thanks again for watching. I'm Mason Marangella from Vertex Effects. This has been my friend Dani Rabin on guitar. Dani, will you play us out?